Greetings, Delvers. Welcome back to the Vaults Remastered. Today, we're going to continue our conversation about the Ignaruk, a homebrewed ancestry I've put together for my Pathfinder 2nd Edition remastered game set in the Darklands analog environment called the Vaults of UnderEarth. And today, we're getting into Hellfire and Brimstone. And we're going to be looking at the first level ancestry feats I've put together for this homebrew, and it's all about that volcanic, magmatic, Avernian, hell-spawned uh, ancestry orcs that have been corrupted by all this backstory of theirs that I talked about in the previous few videos. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel so you can go ahead and look at them. Got a whole playlist going together about my various ancestries. And the Ignaruk, I think, is the fourth one I've put a series together for, so there's lots there for you to take a look at. But without further ado, let's get into this ancestry. So here we go, the feats. If you don't know anything about ancestry feats in Pathfinder, these are abilities and powers and stuff that you're able to select at various levels, starting at first, moving to 5th, ninth, 13th, and 17th, so every 4 levels. That reflects the circumstances of your birth, your upbringing, your bloodline, that sort of thing. They give you the ability to customize and enhance your character based upon your ancestry, based upon that birthright. They're there to ensure that your PC, even if you have another Ignaruk on your team, you're able to select different ancestry feats, these abilities and powers that differentiate you from them because it gives different skills or abilities or roleplay opportunities. And it helps to keep your starting character's choice that you choose at first level or level 0, depending on when you start. It keeps it relevant throughout the game because you're constantly adding new ancestry feats as you go. And to me, it's really important, these ancestry feats, because they are the foundation and the mechanism of role play. I know that's sort of hard to quantify or hard to point at a rule and say, oh, here's role play. But I do think in Pathfinder it's a great system because the idea of choosing your ancestry and then growing it and adding more to it and these abilities you get, because a lot of them are flavored, thematic, that helps you to kind of see your character not because of their class, they're a wizard or a fighter or whatever, and they're getting some new power to destroy an enemy. But these ancestry feats are much more flavorful, much more role play-ish, and they add more mechanics, I think, to that. And so that was one of my things that I was shooting for as I went into this. So my design goals were as follows. I wanted to create a set of options for this homebrew that enhance the flavor of the ancestry. I have a magmatic orc. I have an orc that had fallen down into the pits of hell through betrayal and treachery and climbed their way back up through this fire node, this pit. Took them, hundreds of years to climb back out of there. Finally emerging into the game world through a crater known as the Eye, and through this exposure of the heats and the surface of Avernus and the devils and stuff that were attacking them, it corrupted them, it mutated them, it turned them into what they are. So they're not just orcs, right? They are magmatic orcs. They're the Ignaruk. I also wanted to create a large selection of tough choices. I wanted to have enough there that a player would be going, man, I really want this, but I also want that one. And then there's this other one, depending on their playstyle, depending on what they're looking for. So not only do you have this fun lore that I put together in the original video that I showed you, and you have the mechanics that go behind it and the heritages, you now have these feats that you can choose for your ancestry that a dozen I shoot for every time I create one of these ancestries. And then I go for 8, 6, 4, and 2 at the other levels of 5th, ninth, 13th, and 20th. This gives a lot of choice, a lot of variety. And that's the other thing I wanted to point out is that variety, having options is a big fundamental part of Pathfinder. And if you look at the published content, and this is a table from the archives of Nethys, and this is just the elves, you can see, I'm talking about 12. The elves that have been published, for the remaster and the pre-remaster version of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, there are 16 first level options that you can choose from. So, some of these are potentially tied into a specific campaign or adventure path, but most of them are just open to anybody to take. You know, they're all common rarity. There's only one uncommon that you might need to get your GM's permission from. But there's a lot of options. So if I'm going to go ahead and homebrew something for myself, I need to be able to match this level of variety. The other thing is that I wanted to make sure that I have enough choices there that I could be compatible with variant rules, specifically the Ancestry Paragon variant rule. And this is actually in the Game Mastery Guide, page 194. It's not in the remastered GM core, so this variant rule has not made it into the remaster. Don't know if that means it sucks and nobody played it, or it's going to be coming in a later system. I imagine that's probably the case. But I'm actually kind of using a pseudo variant of this, and I might actually go full into this because I really think, at least in my game setting, the ancestry is extremely critical to each player character. As I mentioned, I believe it's foundational for roleplay, and I have a very story heavy investigation style of game that I'm playing. So I want to make sure that my players have some meat. So one thing I'm looking at here is the Ancestry Paragon variant rule, and what it basically says is that you can get additional ancestry feats faster than you normally would. So most characters, right? They're connected to their ancestry and they pick a feat every 4 levels, as I mentioned. But if you're going to go with the Ancestry Paragon version, you start with 2 ancestry feats, it says down here in the bottom, and you gain another feat every odd level. So you end up with 11 ancestry feats. So if you wanted to play that version, and I'm kind of thinking about it, because my players are only 2nd level right now, so I can throw this in no problem. I don't know if I'd give them the other starting feat or not. And the other part of this is if you saw my previous video, the third one in this Ignaruk series, I also have the heritages I created, 6 of those, and each of those has sets of specific heritage feats that goes with them. So I'm kind of toying with the idea of heritage feat and one of these ancestry feats at 1st level, and then I can go down this path, as we go. It gives your player characters more power, but most of the feats that you'll see are not going to break the game again. So that's one thing I do like with Pathfinder. Homebrewing it, I find, is much easier than with D&D because you have so many guidelines, you have so many rules that kind of allow you to bracket what you're thinking about. So anyway, that's another thing I'm considering here with my goals. And then the other thing I was really shooting for here is that playing another character, let's say your first character dies or whatever, you want to make another one, you can play one from the same exact ancestry that you just played. So if you want to make another Ignaruk character, why not? Because you have enough options with all the different, feat choices, and you get all your different classes and backgrounds you throw in there too. It makes it feel like this is a completely different character. You don't have to go, oh, I played in Wood Elf last time. I don't want to play another one because it's the same thing. That's kind of the way it is in D&D, right? When you pick a character class, or sorry, a race in D&D, at least the current iteration of 5e, you get all your stuff pretty much at 1st level, and no matter what wood elf you pick, you always get the same stuff. Maybe a couple of the races add something at 3rd level or 5th level, but that's it. With Pathfinder, you have all these choices, right? You got 12 choices that you can pick from, so each one of them is going to give a different flavor to your character. So you could easily just at 1st level imagine having 12 options, 12 different starting points for the same exact ancestry. And then, like I said, I've also got the heritage feats on top of that. And if you play with this Ancestry Paragon, you can have even more flavor and options in combinations. So I think that's huge. All right, so now, hey, how do you go about doing this? Because maybe this is cool. You want to set up some homebrew for your own Pathfinder game, but you're looking at this list of 12 or whatever and 16 in the archives of Nethys. Well, how do you start? Where do you go? This is kind of where my trouble was when I first came up with, hey, I want to convert my game over. Because when I first had my homebrew, which was a 5e game, D&D, it was relatively simple, right? You could create a race, come up with, 3 things that race does, and done, right? Because once the character picks it at 1st level, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But with Pathfinder, there's this growth aspect to your ancestry, so you need to come up with the feats that allow that character to grow based upon their ancestry. So, I had to find some guidelines, and the one place I found, there's nothing official that I've seen, at least from 2nd edition, but there was a poster here on the forums for Paizo, who is the publisher of the Pathfinder game, and this was back from 2020, so about 4 years ago. Animated Paper is the person I want to give a shout out here, the poster, and they were posting their rules for house ruling, how to come up with a basic ancestry, a guide. And so they had and this is just a little snippet I took out of a much longer post that they put together, but they had a point buy type of system, and they were given an example of, Warforged and whatever else. They had a couple other examples of how to convert and create an ancestry for Pathfinder. And so I actually use this as my starting point for what I'm going to show you in a couple more minutes here is, and plus what I've actually already shown in my, was it the second video when I put together show the mechanics of my Ignaruk. It was starting from this position here and then weaving in my own template, which I showed in that video as well. So anyway, he had this point buy system, and then he talked about ancestry feats and had done an analysis, and he was creating just a list of six because that kind of matches what you see in the core rule books. This is only about half a dozen feats to start off, so he was shooting for about half a dozen, and he did an analysis of all the different ancestries that were published and came up with these criteria or these categories of feats. There would be some sort of, action training that typically gives a +2 to whatever that action is, aside from an attack roll. Some sort of lore that would go with the ancestry, some bonus feat that you could get, usually some generic, general feat. Maybe access to a different heritage, type of feat or ability power, a cantrip, a simple little spell, some sort of ranged unarmed strike, perhaps, a strike upgrade, a weapon skill, etc., etc. So I started with this foundation, but again, it's 4 years ago. So when I started converting my game over last October in time for the remaster rules to be released, this was already old at that point. So I used this as a starting point, and this is no shade on animated paper, but it wasn't enough for me to really get going, especially with the remaster, because the remaster changed some of the stuff. For instance, the weapon skills. This was like a multi-tiered type of feat in the original 2E rules, but now in the remaster, it's a one and done first level feat you can pick, and then it levels up with you at fifth level. It'll give you access to the deadly traits, or not the deadly traits, but the critical hit traits and stuff for weapons. Anyway, again, you'll kind of see that in my examples in a minute. So anyway, that's kind of where I started. So I want to shout out to Animated Paper, but there's not a ton there, right? Where else can you get information besides just winging it and making things up? But I'm going to go ahead and show you what I use in order to really flesh out ideas for feats, and that is consulting my muse. This is no secret because I've posted many videos when I first started the channel here back in October, November. I did a lot talking about this. I use ChatGPT, or who I call Chatty Cathy, my AI muse. I love her. She does a great job taking ideas and thoughts that I feed into her and helping me expand and define them. And I'm going to showcase that perhaps a little bit today as well, and then dive into my actual feats I came up with. So at this point, I've got some ideas, right? A theme, some flavor, and I want to make a bunch of feats, but I don't have much in the way of guidelines. So what I'll do is I'll take Chatty Cathy, ChatGPT. I've got the paid version right now for. Oh, by the way, their brand new version just updated today. I'm going to show you that one as well. I think it's 4.0 or 4 whatever 4. It's a little zero. Anyway, check out. There's a OpenAI's just released a new version of ChatGPT today. So thank you, OpenAI. So anyway, I'm going to input my theme, my flavor. So I'm talking about magmatic. I'm talking about diabolic. I'm talking about devilish. I'm talking about orcs, right? I'm giving it my history, my lore from my game, and asking her for help coming up with some ideas based upon this theme. I'm going to give it input guidelines. I'm going to tell it, hey, we're using Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We're using the remaster rules. I'm looking for first level stuff. I need 12 feats. I need feats that are going back to animated paper. I want some feats that fall into these categories, right? I'll give it some input. This is one thing, some people who like, oh, Chat, GPT, or AIs, they're just, it's not really doing work or you're just stealing stuff. No, 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 you're wrong. Okay. You've got to feed all this information into it. You have to guide it. Otherwise, the stuff it spits out is going to be nonsense and not make any not going to match your game. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. And again, you'll kind of see in the example I'll show you. Then I'll input similar examples from published work. So I'm going to go ahead and take, Paizo's Pathfinder ancestries. Like for this one example, Ignaruk, I think it was the half orc at the time because the orc had not come out until the remaster. Now I have the orc to use as the remastered version to guide. So I'll take, hey, these are orc based feats that have been published. Take a look at these, Kathy, and see what you think and see if we can come up with some ideas. Then I'm going to, of course, get the initial output from her, but you have to edit it. You have to look at it and make sure that there's not overlap. Things are kind of almost the same thing except for maybe one little bit. You have to look at it for power level. Is it too strong? Is it too weak? That's that comparison to what other stuff is in the game right now. You got to make sure you're clarifying your theme because sometimes she'll lock into an idea and not go in the direction you want. Sometimes she'll give you ideas and you'll expand the theme, as she does this all the time when I'm working with her, coming up with some crazy idea I hadn't thought of. And I'm like, dude, that's genius. Let's go down that path. And then we have to talk about prerequisites because sometimes you can only choose a feat if you've taken a different feat in advance, or you have a certain skill that you're trained in. So we need to flesh that out. And then, of course, sometimes she'll give me a cool idea, but I'm like, ooh, that would really work good for this heritage that I've created already. This is too specific. It's not generic enough for an Ignaruk, but it's very good for the fumarole version heritage of my Ignaruk. So I'll take my guidelines and feed it into Kathy and then ask her to give me feedback, give me help to build this. So what I want to do is actually take a few minutes right now and show how to do this. So in case you're worrying about or trying to do this for yourself, or you think, oh, this is all just ripped off, whatever I'm about to show you, you'll see that it's not. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up Chatty here so we have it. Open that up, boom. All right, so here's my Chat GPT. Let me pull this screen open so I can look at it over here. There we go. And I'm going to create a brand new. So check it out. I've got the ChatGPT 4.0, or maybe that's the 4 degrees. I don't know. And so what I'm going to do is kind of go through my advice here or my strategy that I use. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look. So I want to give it theme and flavor first. Those were my initial guidelines here, right? I want theme and flavor. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and say, can you help me create a new ancestry for Pathfinder 2E that is based on the orc? Let's come up with a new theme here. I want this version of orc to be uh, based on the theme of glacial orcs, cryogenic, ice age, um, cold dwelling, and Arctic living, Arctic surviving, perhaps with a flavor of Neanderthal. So caveman survivors of an encroaching snowball Earth, we'll say. All right, so there's my theme. All right, then the other thing I want to do is go ahead and give her some guidelines. I already told her Pathfinder, so I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit more to that, right? So here's what I want to say. Actually, I want to not create answers. Can you help me create new feats is what I want to say. New feats for a homebrew ancestry for Pathfinder. All right, so here we go. The rules system we're using is Pathfinder's second edition remastered rules. The power level of these feats is for first level PCs. Um, I would like to create a dozen options that any of these glacial orcs can choose at character creation. Character creation. What else? And I need a variety that covers some consistent categories. And then I'll use the ideas that, um, what was it? Animated Paper had mentioned. So Animated Paper had mentioned, action training, ancestral lore, bonus feats, etc. Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and feed this into her, give her some ideas. So let me pause the vid real quick so you're not like watching me type this whole time. Be right back. All right, I just pasted Animated Paper's guidelines here. So boom. And the other thing I want to say also, let's see, the other part I wanted to mention is input examples from published works. Uh, Here's what I'm gonna say. Let her know this. I'm also including the feats from PF2E's player or rule book for the generic orc ancestry to guide your suggestions. Boom. And so I've got those already copied, and I think there was 8 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, 8 of them, right? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 7 of them, 8 of them. Yeah, there are 8. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and paste that. And that's, of course, you can find these on Archives of Nethys. I've already just pasted them or got them off of Archives of Nethys so that it's not, you sitting here watch me copying these one at a time. So anyway, boom, I just slapped all of that. So example, orc weapon familiarity, tusks, hold mark, orc superstition, orc lore, etc., etc. There's these 8 different feats. All right, let's see if I've covered all my guidelines here. All right, so boom, there we go. Please, and here I'll give her one last thing. Please share your ideas for a dozen feats for this new ancestry I'm creating. Uh, be creative and let your imagination fly. Just stay within the theme of glacier, ice, cold, Arctic, and Neanderthal. Thanks. Boom. Hit it. There she goes. Bam. Boom. This new AI is flying, you guys. Holy look at this. It's like a machine gun. Damn. All right, let's take a look, right? So I gave it my thoughts, I gave it my ideas, I gave it examples, I gave it guidelines, and now I'm saying, hey, help me, right? This is fair and square. It's the same thing if I was to go and, go one at a time by myself. I'm just asking for the AI to help me speed this up. So here's what she's got for us. She's got Frostborn Resilience. Glacial Orc is the trait, right? Action training, choose fortitude save. You get a +2 circumstance bonus to fort saves against environmental cold effects, hypothermia, cold damage. That sounds perfectly reasonable for first level. Arctic lore, ancestral lore, you choose a skill, you become trained in survival and Arctic lore. If you're already trained in survival, you may choose a different skill. Okay, again, I've seen that all over the place. Ice Age athlete, you choose a general feat related to physical prowess, such as fleet or nimble. You get this feat as a bonus feat. Frost Heritage, you gain the Frost Giant Heritage. You gain cold resistance equal to half your level and treat environmental cold effects as one step less severe. Sounds cool. Glacial Cantrip, choose the Primal Magic Tradition. You get Ray of Frost Cantrip as an innate spell. I don't know if that's been remastered to a different name. I think it has, but you get the idea, right? Ray of Frost Cantrip. Ice Shards, it's a ranged unarmed strike. So this is using animated papers categories pretty nicely, and it's also referencing or using the orc template from the player core rules, and it's using my flavor, my theme I put in here, so it's following what I gave it. You get a ranged unarmed strike called Ice Shards. This attack has a range increment of 20, deals d4 cold damage, and has the thrown and cold traits. That's pretty cool. Glacial Strength, choose between your unarmed strike damage. Choose between your unarmed strike damage is increased by one die, or your weapon strikes get a point of cold damage. Okay. Glacier Hunter, choose an uncommon martial or simple weapon with a cold theme, such as Ice Axe. You're considered trained in that weapon. Cryogenic Beast Trainer. You have an innate ability to tame and command cold adapted beasts. You become trained in nature and gain your choice of the pet general feat or the trained animal skill feat with a focus on Arctic creatures. I don't know if all these things are in the remastered rulebook or not. I don't know if the new ChatGPT 4.0 here is. I assume it's updated to the point. I haven't researched it yet because this is really just a trial. It just was released today, and because I'm paying ChatGPT 4 user, it gave me the ability to start testing it right now, which is cool. So I don't know what database it's using because, spoiler, the AI is educated and updated, every few months with more and more information. This, of course, is where the controversy, because some people say, oh, it's, being trained on people's stuff. Well, yeah, of course it is. It's called the internet. So if you post the stuff out there, that's what it's doing. I don't want to get into a fight about it, but just, I understand some people think it's stealing, people's ideas. But again, if it's being posted on the internet, then it's fair game. Now, is it hacking your computers at home and downloading stuff off your hard drives? Yeah, that would be illegal and criminal, and I would not be for it. But if it's posted out there on the internet, public domain, that's what the thing's doing. I don't know. I didn't make it. Anyway, your fists are hard as ice. Your fist unarmed attacks no longer have the non-lethal trait. They get the cold trait. Additionally, you can deal cold damage with your unarmed strikes instead of bludgeoning. I like that. Frostbites, glacial orc reaction. You would be if you're reduced to zero, not immediately killed. You're knocked out at one hit point. And wounded condition increases by one. You avoid being knocked out and remain at one, but your wounded goes up by one. Additionally, creatures that attack you in melee take a d6 cold damage until the end of your turn. Is that when you get back up? This is where I would start to clarify with her, because she's got an interesting idea here. I just don't know if the cold damage is all the time or this is only if you've frostbite fallen down. Exactly, does frostbite and ferocity match? You know, maybe Fierce Frost or something. Anyway, those are some things I would edit with her. Frost Touch lore. You're well versed in the lore and traditions of the glacial orc ancestors. You become trained in athletic survival. You're already trained in one of those. You get a different skill. You also get general lore feat, right? Glacial lore. None of this stuff is crazy out there, never been heard before. It's just cranked it out in less than you guys saw. Like 10 seconds it fired this out. I now have a foundation that I can go to and use for the last part here that I'm talking about, which is I edit this now based upon what I wanted. Is there stuff that's overlapping? Is there stuff that doesn't seem in the right power range? Is it too powerful? I want to make sure that theme is staying, tight, which seems like she's doing a good job on that. Expand the theme perhaps, and maybe there's some ideas there. I'm like, ooh, because I would now create heritages as well based upon this idea of this glacial orc, and maybe some of those powers that she's suggesting, those feats, I would make those specific heritage feats. I could do that. Anyway, maybe some of these need prereqs. I would have to dig into that a little bit. Maybe I just need to clarify exactly what we're talking about here and flesh it out more. match it with the mechanics of the game better so that it's actually usable. I think it's a really powerful tool that accelerates your work. It's not doing anything that you couldn't do yourself, it's just doing it a hell of a lot faster. And so, that, my friends, is where I would take this to the next step, and indeed where I got my foundational stuff for my Ignaruk, right? I came up with a theme. I had my lore and all the other stuff for my game world. I used the guidelines, Pathfinder guidelines, animated papers, thoughts on it. I used examples, like I told you, from the half orc. I think I might have thrown in stuff from what was it, the fire, not Genasi, the Geniekin there, the Fritz, I think it was. Stuff from the pre-remastered. Use some of those examples of feats to say, hey, here's a guideline, follow these. Boom. And she can crank out some ideas. And then in the process, you're able to then come up with some really cool stuff, which is the next part of the video. So, boom, let's continue, get into the 12 feats that I have for my Ignaruk. This is just first level. This isn't anything higher. This is just your starting 12. Here we go. The first one, Ancestor's Face. First level feat, Ignaruk trait, and it has the trait of an item. With ashes, blood, soot, and bone piercings, you decorate your face to create a visage of your ancestor. This mask is unique to you and connects you to a fallen member of your tribe, their accomplishments, and their faith. Remember that in my game here, the Ignaruk are these, like I said, these volcanic hellish orcs, but they're very religious, very traditional, very spiritual. They have ancestor worship. They have elemental worship. This combined, worship is known as the Kamlik, and these shamans, they are masters of the Kam. It's called Kam. This elemental, spiritual hybrid energy of fire and stone and earthquakes and ancestors. Anyway, you're able to make a mask, which is an item, and then it's similar to the hold mark or whatever it was called in the orc tradition or the orc feat. So you can see where the idea came from for this one. So when you select this feat, you choose one of the options below for your mask's tradition and symbolism. You're trained in a listed skill, and you gain the dubious knowledge general skill feat when attempting to recall knowledge about magic connected to that skill. You may select this feat more than once, representing your ability to connect with the spirits of additional ancestors and add their likeness to the mask. So your mask can become more and more complicated as you choose. What are your choices? The gods, the land, and the spirit. Religion, nature, occultism. There is no arcane choice because the Ignaruk absolutely detest arcane magic, so they wouldn't incorporate it as part of their belief system. But religion, nature, the primal, right? Occultism, these all would make sense for them. All right, so there's feat number one. You can definitely tell if you look at the orc feats, this is derived from the hold mark, I believe it was called. All right, next one is Basalt Knuckles feat, and this is again Ignaruk trait. Your fists have hardened by hardship in battle. So remember, these guys have climbed their way out of hell itself, and their skin and their fists have become hardened like stone. And so your naturally tough skin and dense bone tempered into near stone by the fires of Avernus's volcanic surface. Your fist unarmed attacks no longer have the non lethal trait, and they gain the parry weapon trait. So your fists are now lethal weapons, and you can parry or use them to block attacks. Third feat, Burning Hatred. Ignaruk again. Your heart aches for vengeance against those who have wronged your people. Revenge and vengeance is a huge part of this ancestry and its lore. I talked about that a ton in the first video in this series, so go and check that one out from the playlist if you're not sure what I'm referring to here. But you get a +1 circumstance bonus to damage with weapons and unarmed attacks against creatures with the Morshael, Yara, Caligni, and Ganishio trait. Those are the main other ancestries in the Vaults of the UnderEarth game world. Morshael are like my Dark Elves. Yara are the Darrow. Caligni are your humanish, shadowy humans, and then the Ganishio are the Deep Gnomes. And then the bonus increases to +2 if you have the Droog. The Droog are the gray dwarves, those Duergar. They absolutely hate them. If your attack would deal more than one weapon die of damage, the bonus is multiplied by the number of weapon dice or unarmed attack dice. So it's +1 per damage die or +2. And then in addition, if any creature critically succeeds at an attack against you and deals damage to you, you gain your bonus to damage against that creature for 1 minute, regardless of whether it has the chosen trait. So if you get smacked, you get that +1 bonus to them if it's a critical hit against you, regardless of whether or not they have one of these traits. You just do not like being hit. Diabolic Lore, another feat. This has the Ignaruk and the Fiend traits. You've devoted yourself to researching the secrets of hell and its denizens that your shamanic leaders guided your escape from. You gain the trained proficiency in religion and occultism. If you would automatically become trained in one of those skills, you instead become trained in a skill of your choice. I gotta double check. This might need to be an or religion or occultism. I don't know how many feats give both skills, so this might be a typo that I have to edit. Again, this is an example of the process, right? You get an idea that Kathy's given to you. You got to edit it. You got to revise it. You got to test it, right? You got to make sense of it. All of these things I'm trying to make sense by having them tie into my game lore, tie into the history of these Ignaruk. You also gain additional lore, general feat for hell or devil lore. Next one, Faith in the Camlic. A reaction, first level feat again. Ignaruk, concentrate traits. Trigger, you attempt to a saving throw against a spell or magical effect and have not yet rolled. You defend yourself against magic by relying on techniques derived from your beliefs in elementalism and ancestral spirits. You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to your saving throws against the triggering effect. This bonus increases to +2 if the effect derives from the arcane tradition. Whoops. I'm not sure if I need the concentrate trait here. I think the original idea when I first put a version of this together was it would. I don't think it was a reaction. I think it was a you can do this and then maintain it for like a minute. So I think the concentrate trait is no longer needed here. You gain in your state because this is just a one and done. One and done. So I don't know, I need to look at this because maybe one of two things. One is I need to put a number limit on this as far as times per day, because otherwise, right, it's constantly, making it easier for you to save. But maybe it's supposed to be like that or should be like that. Or maybe it should be a 10-minute duration, 1 minute duration, and then the concentrate trait would make sense. So again, I need to revise this. I need to figure this out. And this is the other good thing about making the videos or going through this process out loud is it helps me see potential errors before it hits the table. Now, this has already hit the table, but I don't have anybody who's taken this feat, so it hasn't hit the table in that sense. Anyway, boom. By the way, if you like these pictures, again, this might stir some controversy. Dolly. This is AI generated Dolly imagery from open AI as well. So if you again, I'm not trying to sell you on AI or open AI or whatever. I'm just telling you what I use. So boom, Dolly. I work with the two programs at the same time to get some cool images for what I'm trying to portray in my feats or in my ancestries here. And then of course I'm using the Kathy to help me come up with some of these ideas and make it quick. And refine it much more easily. She has a lot stronger analytical power than I do. All right, the next one is Ignaruk armor proficiency. This is kind of my own idea. It goes along with the weapon proficiency, but I like this idea of armor. So let me see if you guys agree or not. If you don't like this or you think this is broken, let me know or how to fix it. So here's what it says. You've been taught the smithing techniques of your forebears used to forge armors that served not only to ward you from the nonstop onslaught of infernal hordes, but could dish out damage in equal measure through strategically placed hooks, barbs, and spikes. You have familiarity with armors and shields with the Ignaruk Orc trait, plus shield spikes and spiked gauntlet. So I just picture these guys hammering out armor of like metal and stone with spikes and hooks and barbs and things on it, and just making those almost weapons themselves besides the armor. So then what it does is, in addition, if you're wearing metallic armor, anytime an enemy attempts to grapple you, reposition you, shove you, so they're getting their hands on you, they have to make a reflex save against your class DC, or they're going to take a D4 piercing damage as they're cutting and skewering themselves on your armor and all these hooks and things. And the damage increases D4 every 4 levels up to 5d4 maximum, which is pretty standard for these types of cantrippy ancestry feat. They make them at least usable even at higher levels. Because a D4 at 17th level is not going to do anything to an enemy. All right, then we have the weapon familiarity, which you're familiar with because this is almost the same thing as what you would have seen in the orc one. So you've trained with the brutal weapons used by your ancestries to slay devils and infernal creatures that hounded you or them at every ledge and outcrop they reached during their escape from hell. You have familiarity with weapons bearing the Ignaruk orc trait plus the knuckle dagger, neck splitter, war flail, and spiked chain for the purposes of proficiency. For the purpose of proficiency, you treat any of these weapons, any of these that are martial weapons, as simple weapons, and any that are advanced weapons as martial weapons. And at 5th level, whenever you get a critical hit with one of these weapons, you get its critical specialization effect, which I think is persistent bleed, or persistent bleed is the default if you want to use, your own. I haven't homebrewed a bunch of ignorant weapons at this point, but it's on the to-do list. So this is kind of covers that idea. All right, so that is that one. The next one is Infernal Ferocity. So this is this version of ferocity that orcs or half orcs would have had. Once a day, so I do have, a reaction that has a limit here. So the trigger is you'd be reduced to 0 hit points, but not immediately killed. So once a day you can do this. That's why I won't think about going back to the other reaction I was talking about, the one with the saving throw one, and either add a time limit to it or add a number per day or something. Your kind of climb from the very pit of hell to wreak havoc upon your ancient enemies. During your trek, heat couldn't kill you, starvation couldn't kill you, fiends couldn't kill you, noxious gases couldn't kill you, and certainly this puny wound can't kill you. Okay, you avoid being knocked out and remain at 1 hit point, and your wounded condition increases by 1. That's the infernal ferocity. Molten core. Here comes your cantrip. You can call the magmatic heat burning inside you into the palm of your hand. You can cast the ignition cantrip as that was produce flame. Now it's ignition. In the remaster, you can cast the ignition cantrip as a primal innate spell at will. A cantrip is heightened to a spell rank equal to half your level rounded up. So that's all remaster terminology there. Pit spawn, feat 1, first level, another Ignaruk trait. Your infernal exposure manifests as molten brimstone, and you can focus the magma into your hand to attack your foes. You gain a brimstone spike unarmored attack, which requires a free hand to use. So kind of picture you like you're shape shifting your hand in the spike. This is an agile unarmed attack in the brawling weapon group that deals a d4 piercing and an additional 1 fire. On a critical, the target takes a d6 persistent fire. If you have an item bonus to attack rolls on unarmed attacks, the persistent damage increases by the same amount. Okay, the only thing I'm looking at here is I'm thinking about it. This might need to have a scalable increase as you level up again, because don't quote me on this one, but I think most weapons are that sort of thing in Pathfinder scale up as you level up with additional damage dice. So I might need to do something like that with this. Otherwise, D4 is not going to do much later level, right? You're not going to barely scratch anything. But on a critical, you get D6 persistent fire. And if you have an item bonus to attack rolls on unarmed attacks, the persistent damage increases by the same amount. So that would boost your persistent if you got some item bonus. So that makes it seem like you can enhance this weapon, perhaps. I don't know if you could throw a rune on it or whatever, but anyway, it's something, again, you'd have to think about this from a homebrew perspective. And sometimes these questions don't come up until they come up. All right, the old ways. Another feat, Ignaruk. The shamans taught you, your people's warrior history from before the fall. So from before the Ignaruk were Ignaruk and have fallen, they were orcs. They're part of the Deathmaw tribe. And so anyway, these shamans have told the tales of the great feats of strength of these warriors from when your people used to live on the surface, shared it with you, the hardship your ancestors endured, so that you can pass this wisdom down to future generations. You become trained in athletics and survival. Again, it might be an either or. If you would automatically become trained in one of those skills, you instead become trained in a skill of your choice. And you also get the additional lore general feat for Ignaruk or Orc lore. So yeah, I gotta double check this because it might be an either or. I think in the original it was and, but the remaster I've seen just in the back of my head, I'm thinking it was an either or. All right, Tearing Tusks, feat 1. Traits Ignaruk. You have extremely long, jagged tusks, perfect for ripping meat from bone. You gain a tusk unarmed attack that deals a d6 piercing. Your tusks are in the brawling group and have the finesse and unarmed traits. Special, you can take the feat only at first level, and you can't retrain into it. You can retrain out of this feat only through drastic measures like breaking off your tusks or filing them flat or something like that. All right, I think that was the last one. So yeah, let's wrap this up. So conclusion, what were we going for here? Well, we wanted to make sure that these feats we're designing match this infernal legacy I'm talking about. So all the feats I'm trying to design here, they have this unique ability to reflect the world of these Ignaruk, right? That volcanic upbringing, this hellish, exposure. That survival instinct, this vengeance and payback mentality that they had. So that whole legacy is tied into their feats, and that's where when I said that these ancestry feats really help you mechanistically with role play. This is what I'm talking about. The feats you're picking are really tying to your background, tying to your ancestry, tying to your upbringing, tying to who you are at your core, not what job as an adventurer you've chosen, like a class would. Diversity, the other thing I was targeting here is that the options I wanted to come up with would make sure that each Ignaruk character is distinct. So even though you might have a full party, like 6 players all playing Ignaruk, between the backgrounds, the heritages, the classes, and these feats, you can have a ton of variety, even though everybody's playing the same, species, right? Different skills, abilities, different ways to approach your challenges, you name it. Role play. Mention this again, right? Your feats, I'm trying to make sure they can enrich the role play so that it gives you something more to your character than just, oh, it gives me a +1 bonus or whatever, right? There's some story for your feat. It ties them into their lore, into their ancestry, their backgrounds, etc. Theme, again, mention this. Reinforcement of this whole magmatic volcanic orc idea. So lots of the feats are talking about hellfire, heat, survival, stone, volcanoes, the diabolic heritages, etc., etc. The foundation, these feats are creating a foundation for your character. So these choices you're making now are going to influence your abilities and your role within your party moving forward. Some of these will become prerequisites for the 5th level, for the ninth level, etc. feats later. And they're going to be relevant throughout the game, right? Some of them will actually get more powerful. You'll be able to do more damage or whatever with them. And lastly, what I was shooting for, hopefully I hit the mark on this, is these feats are designed to invite you not just to, oh, pick a new thing, but to actually become curious about the game world, right? Curious about the lore, the story, amplify the exploration, which is central to my game itself, this whole big story you're trying to tell. And if you go ahead and try to homebrew stuff, you might as well tie in your story with it. Otherwise, you kind of miss the mark, in my opinion. All right, hopefully this was good stuff for you. You enjoyed, you kind of see my secret behind the curtain, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how you can get ancestries going for yourself and all their feats and not be nervous about, going for it. All right, have yourselves a good day and take care.